The Mirror and the Light, summer 1536. Thomas Cromwell is now 50 years old. The same small, quick eyes, the same thick-set, imperturbable body, the same schedules. He's at home wherever he wakes. The Rolls House on Chancery Lane, or his city house at Austin Friars, or at Whitehall with the King, or in some other place where Henry happens to be. He rises at 5, says his prayers, attends to his ablutions, and breaks his fast. By 6 o'clock, he's receiving petitioners, his nephew Richard Cromwell at his elbow. Master Secretary's barge takes him up and down to Greenwich, to Hampton Court, to the Minton Armouries at the Tower of London. Though he is a commoner still, most would agree that he is the second man in England. He's the King's deputy in the affairs of the Church. He takes licence to inquire into any department of government or the royal household. He carries in his head the statutes of England, the psalms and the words of the prophets, the columns of the King's account books, and the lineage, acreage, and income of every person of substance in England. He's famous for his memory, and the King likes to test it by asking him for details of obscure disputes from 20 years back. He sometimes carries a sprig of dried rosemary or rue and crumbles it in his palm as if inhaling the scent would help him. But everyone knows it's only a performance. The only things he can't remember are the things he never knew. His chief duty, it seems just now, is to get the King new wives and dispose of the old. His days are long and arduous, packed with laws to be drafted and ambassadors to beguile. He goes on working by candlelight, through summer dusks, through winter sunsets when it is dark by 3:30. Even his nights are not his to waste. Often he sleeps in a chamber near the King, and Henry wakes him in the small hours and asks him questions about treasury receipts, or tells him his dreams and asks what they mean. Sometimes he thinks he'd like to marry again. It is 7 years since he lost Elizabeth and his daughters. But no woman would tolerate this kind of life. The Mirror and the Light, autumn 1536. Thomas Cromwell confers with Jane Seymour, Henry's third queen. He answers the summons from Jane the Queen, finds her with a book in her lap, a book of hours. He thinks, I know that volume, belonged to the other one. Jane holds out the book. This is hers, Anne Boleyn's. She and the King passed it between them. The King has written an inscription under the Man of Sorrows. He takes the book from her. Christ is kneeling, his flesh gory from head to heels, each bleeding cut fine as a wire. The picture is set within a border of pea pods and ripe strawberries. The King has written some lines in French. Lady Rochford has kindly translated for me, Jane says. I am yours, Henry R., forever. And then she replied to him. He can't see the reply. Look under the Annunciation, Jane says. Anne had hope, of course, in those days. She thought she could bear a son. He finds the picture. A coy virgin with lowered eyes is getting good news. The angel of the Lord is right behind her. Jane recites, By daily proof you shall me find, to be to you both loving and kind. Do you think she was kind to him? Not often, he says. Jane's hand moves over the book's binding, as if it were a living creature she's soothing. Sometimes, when the king has, visited me, then he falls asleep in my bed. But he soon wakes because he has bad dreams. Then he kneels by the bed. He cries out, mea culpa, mea culpa, mea maxima culpa. And to that he appends Latin I don't follow. Then the gentlemen of the privy chamber come and walk him back to his own chamber. And you, madam, he says, I trust you then take your rest. Jane nods to Mary Shelton, who stands at her elbow. Mary curtsies and goes out, giving him a weary smile. Jane waits till the door is closed. My ladies say that if a wife does not take pleasure in the act, she will not get a child. Is that true? Jane waits. It seems that, humbly, she would wait all day. She knows she asks questions to which answers are not likely. The Mirror and the Light, 1539. The king's fourth wife, Anne of Cleves, arrives in England. While the bridal party from Cleves is held up in Calais by bad weather, they pass the time in jousting and visiting from house to house, devising masques and plays. A merchantman is reported wrecked off Boulogne, casting on shore a cargo of wool and Castile soap. He, Cromwell, imagines the ocean foaming, bubbles on the crest of each wave. Please God fetch Anna soon. The king is anxious. Everyone who has seen her seems delighted with the new queen. From Calais, Lady Lisle writes to her daughter Anne Bassett, one of the new maids of honour, and Anne takes the letter to the king, handing it with her deepest curtsy. The king reads out the letter. Good and gentle, to serve and please. So there you are, he says to the girl. What news could be better? You will have a loving mistress, and I a loving mate. Anne Bassett blushes. Mate seems blunt. Possibly she doesn't like to think of the king in bed. How times change. 10 years back, she would have been in bed with him. In Calais, Anna is lodged in the Queen's apartments at the Exchequer. She's invited the English lords to supper. She's used to dining in public and doesn't know it's no longer the custom of English kings. But she means well. She wants to see her new countrymen at table and learn their customs. Her manner is regal, Lord Fitzwilliam reports. He and Gregory Cromwell spend an hour with her, teaching her card games that the king likes. It's her own idea, and a clever one. The wind changes. 27th December, Anna lands at Deal, in the rain and after dark. They row her ashore, a princess coming out of the sea. She will go from Deal to Dover, from Canterbury to Rochester, and by the first week of the new year, she will be approaching London from the east. The king will meet her at Blackheath, conduct her to Greenwich Palace, and marry her by 12th night. The Mirror and the Light, summer 1540. Thomas Cromwell in the Tower. Beginning early in tender summer dawns, the interrogations proceed into the hot afternoons, when the broad light in the chamber grows dusty. Sometimes the sessions are quiet and industrious. Sometimes they're more like exchanges of insult than any proceedings of state. Like Fitzwilliam, Thomas Risley cannot look at him. He says, he did this and he did that, as if Thomas, Earl of Essex, were not in the room. When Gardiner graces them with his presence, he is grave, dry, judicious, careful to suppress the bubbling anticipation he must feel. The Clerk Gwynn sneaks back a time or two. Norfolk doesn't notice him because the clerk's beneath his notice, unless he offends. The clerk entertains him, the prisoner, by sometimes casting a glance up to heaven, or turning down his mouth in disbelief at what he must record, till Rich bursts out, "I'm not content with this clerk. He keeps looking at the prisoner." "So do you keep looking at me," he says. "I am not content with you, Richard Rich. You speak as if I've been a traitor all the years you've known me. Where's your evidence been till now? Did it fall out through a hole in your pocket?" Rich says, "It's no small thing to indict a man so close to the king. I sought guidance. I prayed about it." "And your prayers were answered?" Rich says coldly, "Oh, yes." In this way the hours pass, marked off by the bells from St. Peter ad Vincula and from the city outside the walls. The questions never make more sense than they did on the first day, nor does the picture of his life ever reflect the reality as he sees it. The mirror presents an alien face, eyes askew, mouth gaping. Lord Montague had once said, "The king never made a man, but he destroyed him again." Why should Cromwell be an exception?